Alright, yo, it's Undiscovered Prospect. My name is Thomas, and today we're about to watch this Eugene Bleecker video. This guy, I stopped playing the game, but after I stopped playing the game, I probably found the dude that I connected with the most on what he has to say. So, I'm gonna rewind this video a little bit, and we're gonna watch his breakdown. See what's going on here.
Baseball is such a game of tradition, right? Like, it gets passed down from generation to generation. And ultimately, that makes us all super passionate about it, right? Like, passion is what led us here, right? Think about Augie Garrido, right? Giving that speech, Pete Rose diving headfirst into every base, million miles an hour, right? We're all super.
All right, so I agree. The passion is what kept me in the game, but I disagree in the sense that, like, I was never a huge fan of baseball. I love the passion for, like, kind of selfish reasons or, like, team-oriented reasons, I guess you could say, even though those contradict each other. I wanted to play the game. I wanted to be the best at the game, and the team I wanted to be on the best team. You know what I'm saying? It wasn't so much like I watched, like, all these legendary videos, right? You know what I'm saying?
Passion. And the interesting thing about passion, right, the root, pati from Latin, actually means to suffer greatly for what we love. And I think we all know what that's like as baseball coaches, especially recently, right? Like, we've hit this information age. The game has changed, right? People have changed, right? This information age we've hit, it is pretty amazing. We're getting it thrown at us from every which way, right? We have players getting stuff from social media. We're getting stuff from social media.
Unnecessary, if you ask me. The information is unnecessary unless you're, like, high level. You know what I'm saying? It's a language. Unless you're, like, at Wake Forest or, like, high level D1 minor leaguer, the information, exit velo, all that stuff don't mean much. Promise you.
Tons of things being thrown at us. We have no idea who to listen to, what's right, what's wrong. We got all this technology, right, coming out every single day, every year. We have new forms of technology coming out. We have to figure out, how to use it, what it means. We have, StatCast, Baseball Savant, Fangraphs. There's more information than ever before, but there's actually less truth.
I love data, right? Like, I love data analysis and sports data analytics, but I think there are cases in which we become too slavish to it. And so there's this almost desire to validate everything by data, and it's backward. It's making something important because we can measure it. It's not measuring it because it's important.
Now, think about the power of that statement for a second. We're making things important because we can measure them. We're not measuring them because they're important. This data revolution is amazing. It's created amazing opportunities.
It's like they want everything to be so black and white, right? And especially in baseball, everything can't be black and white. It's very subjective. And, if we're staying on the analogy, there's a broad range of colors where things can fall into.
Amazing things, and it's necessary for us to continue to grow the game and get better at our jobs. But it's also created a lot of problems, and it's created a lot of confusion for people. The reality is that most coaches, there's tremendous constraints placed on us, right? Like facility limitations, time constraints, budgets, staff restrictions.
Yo, especially if you won't understand this unless you play in the Northeast. And look, I lived and played baseball in the Southeast almost my entire life. And I moved up here for my junior year of high school. The constraints they face in the Northeast are unlike any other place, that I've lived, right? Obviously, you could say some other place that I haven't lived, but the lack of facilities, the lack of coaches who are, capable and able to train you at a high level, and, like, obviously budgets and staff restrictions are everywhere, but especially in the Northeast, man. I'm telling you, it's just a little bit harder up here to get after it.
And this has created a ridiculous learning curve for coaches and for players everywhere, right? And ultimately, there's really just no school for coaches, right? There's no place that we can go to really learn how to do our jobs. It's up to us to figure that out on our own journeys. So today, I'm going to kind of walk you guys through these three presentations through some of my journey and some of our journey at 108 and the things that we've learned, over the last 10 years. So initially, I'm from Long Island, New York, right? That's where I grew up. And I grew up in a military household. I grew up in my grandparents' house. My grandfather was a retired lieutenant colonel in the military, and he was an attorney, right? And information was really important to him, knowledge, right? But being logical, being passionate, these were things that were really important to him and were really instilled in me. And I want to share the 3 most important lessons that I've ever learned in my entire life, okay? 1, your success in life will be based on how much information you've been able to acquire and how effectively you can communicate it to other people, right? Think about the power of that statement, right?
At the moment, let's see what he says, but I disagree with that at the moment.
Information is nice to have, but if you can't effectively communicate it, it's really worthless. And no matter what job you have, but especially for us as coaches and educators, how we understand the swing or hitting doesn't matter. It matters if we can communicate that to the player, right?
All right, I agree with that for sure. Like, you can have a ex minor leaguer who had a good career, played 8 years in the minor leagues, had a good swing. Maybe he hit like average 275 in the minor leagues, right? Maybe he hit like 300 in college. But the experience alone does not mean that he is a good coach. Sometimes the best coaches that I've played for, or like the guys around me that I see are becoming the best coaches, are the guys that are able to communicate through analogies, communicate like the terminology of the swing. Like, baseball is a language, the fundamentals are a language, and you got to be able to comprehend but also translate and speak it, right? And that's key. The reason I said I didn't agree with this at first, right, is because sometimes ignorance is bliss, and that actually is true. There are people who have a good feel for things that succeed off the feel alone, not so much all the information they acquire. So, I mean, I do see what he's saying. That was just my initial reaction at first.
People. Number 2, you can get the same education at Harvard in a public library that you can at Harvard if you read the right books. Now, that statement has become even more powerful for me personally over the last 10 years, right? Information is just flooding. There's stuff everywhere. If you dig, there is a tremendous amount of gold that you can find, okay? Number 3.
All right, with that number 2, right? All right, this is important, right? We're in the information age, technology age. I get what he's saying, but again, there is so much information thrown at you on a regular basis through TikTok, Instagram, YouTube. Your algorithm's throwing stuff at you. Your friends are telling you to look up stuff. You look up stuff. There's so much information that it's actually, now they're saying that we're getting flooded with information. We're not comprehending anything. So what I think is key nowadays is to skip the hurdle of the research and go to someone who's already done the research, right? So now, 1, the people who have done the research, have the experience, are more valuable. But 2, the access, right? It's not just the information, it's the access, the direct access to information that's already been trial and errored, researched, and can be translated to someone who's looking for it quickly, right? It's all about speed, how quickly you can acquire information, how quickly you can use that information in game. And this is whatever, this is in game, this is in school, this is if you're learning stocks. It's all about the access and the speed of implementation, right? That's it. That's really what it is.
Okay, number 3. The average person, if you look at their daily life, they're going to spend about 8 hours sleeping, 8 hours at work, and 8 hours of their own free time every single day. If you extrapolate that over a lifetime, right, we're looking at 1/3 of your life sleeping, 1/3 working, and 1/3 of your own free time. But I think we could all agree the time that we're sleeping really doesn't count, right? We're not awake to actually experience it. So essentially, half of your awake life is your work, and half is your free time. Now, if you don't like showing up to your job every day, if you don't like your work, half of your life is not going to be very fulfilling. It's going to be pretty miserable. And on top of that, if you're only working 8 hours a day and that's the only time you're putting into your craft, you're probably going to fail. You're not likely to be.
All right, that's a super fact right there. That is a super fact. Let's just go back so we can look at this. So he's talking about we got a third in each section, right? You got 24 hours a day, 8, 16, 24, right? We get that. So and this is the average person noted, right? The average person sleeps 8 hours a day, works 8 hours a day, and has 8 hours of free time. So if you want to be average, this is your game plan right here. Boom, he gave it to you right here, right? This is right here, right above me, right here. This is the average game plan. If you want to be average, execute this right here. But like he was just saying once he went on, if 8 hours is all you're doing in a day, then like you're going to be average. So if you want to be above average, think about it. Kobe said that he would wake up at like, I forget the exact number, but he said he'd wake up at like 4, go work out, come home, take a nap, eat, go do it again. He'd work out 4 times in a day. He probably slept for like 4 hours. So he slept for 4 hours, boom, that frees up 4 hours for these two. Now, if you really want to get in your craft with like baseball or something, this is the one. This is the one right here. This work has got to be like 10 hours. And it's not 10 hours you swinging in a cage, right? That's 10 hours. That's 10 hours between school and maybe a job if you need some income. You're watching baseball, right? And you don't got to watch MLB. Like, that stuff's kind of phony to me. You know, learn from a guy like this. Guy like me. Follow me, Undiscovered Prospects on social media. In this free time has got to be like, whatever the hours is, it's got to be less than 8. And it's got to be super regenerative so you can go back to work. You got me? Your sleep is really like, you know, whatever. You got to sleep. We get it. Cool. The whatever your free time is got to be super regenerative to your energy to get back to what you're trying to do, because you gotta be able to go at this work all day, especially if you're a dude.
Over a lifetime, right? We're looking at a third of your life sleeping, a third working, and a third of your own free time. But I think we could all agree the time that we're sleeping really doesn't count, right? We're not awake to actually experience it. So essentially, half of your awake life is your work, and half is your free time. Now, if you don't like showing up to your job every day, if you don't like your work, half of your life is not going to be very fulfilling. It's going to be pretty miserable. And on top of that, if you're only working 8 hours a day and that's the only time you're putting into your craft, you're probably going to fail. You're not likely to be very successful, right? You got to be willing to do that extra work. So, you know, you got to figure out what you love, right? And you know, for me, that was huge in my household, right? What do you love to do? What do you want to learn about? And for me, it was 3 things. It was fishing. I love fishing. I love hunting big game fish. It was food. My family actually owns an Italian specialty store and a chain of them back east. And I grew up working there. I started when I was 12.
Yo, I'm not Italian, but shout out the Italians, man. They did it right. They got the food. They got the family values. They know what's up. Shout out the Italians, bro.
Right? So I became a huge foodie. I love to cook and especially love Italian food. 3, baseball. Man, I have always, ever since I can remember, I've been obsessed with the game. Like, I was a kid that was playing baseball video games, watching baseball movies, collecting baseball cards, anything and everything you could think of, right? And to the point where, like, even my twin daughters...
I was a little different. Yeah, I watched baseball movies. Yeah, I watched, like, sports stuff. I played a lot of baseball since I was young. But, again, I was obsessed with the competition and being the best. That was the motivating factor for me. I didn't love the game till later on. For a long time, I guess you could say it was ego-driven.
Her middle name is after the stadium I grew up going to games at. And the other one is named after my favorite player of all time. Even this stupid mustache I have is a throwback to the first set of baseball cards ever printed, right? So growing up, I was blessed with
that mustache pretty fire, though. We can't lie.
the opportunity to go to an academy for like 10 years. And man, like, the impact that had on my life, right? New York Tech Baseball Academy, unbelievable, right? It was like the best experience of my life. It taught me everything I could ever want to know about the game, and especially just to really love it, right? And to be passionate about it. But you know, I came up in a really old school environment, right? It was all that conventional wisdom that gets passed down generation to generation. And when I first started coaching, that's what I was doing. I was passionately professing all of that information that I'd worked so hard to acquire. And even though it was old school, the truth is, like, I thought I was a pretty good coach, right? I was doing travel ball, I was coaching college summer ball, we won games, guys got better, we had tangible results. You know, like, I felt like I was a pretty good coach until 2010 when I went to my first ABCA convention. And I met Don Slott from Right View Pro, and I listened to Ron Woolforth and Brent Strom speak at that ABCA convention.
Yo, side note, one day I'm gonna speak at this. I promise you. Promise you, that's a goal.
I got hit in the head with a bag of bricks, okay? That's where I learned about Bernstein's scientific principle for the first time, that the human body will organize itself based on the intent of the activity, right? So Bernstein's scientific principle, all of it changed my life. I mean, we went back, we were self-organization, swinging as hard as we can, throwing as hard as we can. And that's not something I had ever taught before, right? All that was new, okay? Then Derek Jeter, right? Growing up in New York, even as a Mets fan, like, I watched Derek Jeter chopping these swings all the time in the on-deck circle. And I got to learn at my academy from his hitting coach with the Yankees, Rick Down, who taught us about swinging down and the importance of it. And then I saw Jeter when I met Don Slott, and he showed me Derek Jeter's never swung down in his whole life. Every ball he's ever hit, his barrel travels up. And I was like, oh my God, right? After all that, I went back and I just went berserk. I got a slow motion system. I was studying anybody and anything and everything I could find. For me, being so passionate about education and information, and growing up having really put time into studying the game, and then to learn that these things that I think are so true that I would have, you know, bet anything I had on are incorrect. Like that profoundly changed me and changed my approach. So I went hunting, right? I studied Wallenrock and Lana and, you know, everything hitting I could find. I went and studied pitching. I was looking at Texas Baseball Ranch. I was in.
All right, so this right here, yo, right? Watch
his
here.
whole life. Every ball he's ever hit, his barrel travels up.
This is
and
crazy
like,
right here, right?
Oh my God, right? After
Not
all
chopping
that,
down, but he's chopping down. So when I played, I kind of did the same thing, right? And A-Rod gets a lot of hate for talking about this, but it's not the fundamentals that he's teaching you to swing down. It's what you're thinking almost as a mental cue to trigger this right here. You see this? This is crazy, man. Like, this is like, people dog on Jeter's swing, but like, this is so clean, dude. Like, watch the top hand work right here. Like, I'm a fiend for, like, the top hand, and if it works, pause.
Growing up in New York, even as a Mets fan.
Boom. You see that flick and extension right there, dude? That creates so much, I'm not even going to say power. It just creates a lot. But watch how he's, like, using this on-deck thing right here.
And he swings all the time in the on-deck circle. And I got to learn at my academy from his hitting coach with the Yankees, Rick.
What he's trying to tell himself there, right, is that this knob comes to the ball, right? We ain't doing all this flip stuff. And don't get me wrong, the flip stuff can work. Like the judge stuff, it can work. But the thing about baseball is a swing, just like languages, there's a lot of languages, there's a lot of swings. And this is the swing that I correlated with the most. So watch again. He's chopping down. He's bringing this around to the ball, right? Watch. He's really chopping that. He's really chopping that. That's a chop. That's a chop movement. Let's see if we get this one more time without going back.
Importance of it. And then I saw Jeter when I met Don.
Watch this. He chops his hand. Just like he's chopping on deck. He's chopping that hand, and then watch how the top hand works here. Boom.
Travels up.
It pops through, right? It's like two parts. Top hand and bottom hand. Bottom hand, 50%. It gets you there. Top hand, 50%. It gets you through it. Right? So this is just crazy right here.
Oh my God.
I love this
right?
shit.
After all that,
Absolutely
I went back and I just went berserk. I got a slow motion system. I was studying anybody and anything and everything I could find. For me, being so passionate about education and information, and growing up having really put time into studying the game, and then to learn that these things that I think are so true that I would have, bet anything I had on are incorrect. Like that profoundly changed me and changed my approach. So I went hunting, right? I studied Wallenrock and Lana and, everything hitting I could find. I went to study pitching. I was looking at Texas Baseball Ranch. I was NPA certified. I was doing driveline stuff back in 2011, 2012, or at least starting to, study it at that time.
Guys like this I like because they got so much knowledge. They don't even use it all the time, but they just acquired it so they know the fundamentals, right?
I was doing research on everything I could find, ASMI, Alan Nathan's, or anything I could find I was researching, right? And what happened? Well, we got results. We got some results. And, that I became very brazen in that, right? Because it was all this information I thought I knew. And then I learned all this stuff, and then guys were starting to get better. And I was against the swing down thing. Everybody's got to swing up, right? And, even with those results, like, you have to realize, and this is something I've learned over my time doing this, like, you have to be objective. And I've gotten more and more objective over the time because, it's a Dunning-Kruger. You keep learning that you don't know it all, right? And not everybody was getting results, right? At least not that counted. Not everybody was getting results that translated to 7 o'clock when the lights turn on. So I had to figure out why. Why? How come these things I'm doing aren't working? Why isn't it working, right? So what are we missing? And that was a big purpose behind 108. When I opened up 108 in 2014, that was the goal, right? I put away travel ball, put away classes, lessons, all that other stuff. And all I wanted to do, I got rid of everything else I was doing, and I put all of my eggs in the...
Yo, why... I don't know why, this is just a side note. Why does everything start in California? Like, if you into fitness stuff, bro, all the fitness influencers, all that stuff started in California. Baseball, there's always fire facilities in California. Like, California was like the birthplace of everything. I don't even know, like, the gold rush, right? What?
Development basket, right? Because I felt like there was so much more. And man, I hired the head sports scientist from the Washington Nationals to come work for me for 2 years. I hired guys from Cressy Sports Performance come work for me. I mean, I went all in. I mean, we're talking, a ridiculous overhead, right? Mostly spent on like coaches, bringing them in from all over the country, having houses for them to stay in, just so we could push this thing forward and really figure it out. We went all in. We partnered with the biomechanics lab, met a brilliant biomechanist, partnered with a lab so we could really do some real research and figure out like what's true. I want truth. I don't want conventional wisdom anymore. I want truth, right? Now, speaking of that, I heard Neil deGrasse Tyson say this, and this is one of the most powerful statements I've ever heard. Wisdom is the distilled essence of knowledge once you've forgotten all the details, right? Knowledge, information is one thing. Wisdom is knowing how to use it and knowing what to pay attention to.
That's crazy.
And I think that we often get myopic.
That's crazy, right? Quick example. Teachers are smart. They got knowledge, right? But not all teachers got wisdom. And that's not just school teachers, that coaches, that's all the above. But the OG that gives you the game, right, that sits on the porch, right, he's got wisdom, right? He don't just teach you it. He gives you, like, the wisdom. You know what I'm saying? You can feel how different the energy is in the words right there.
Right, in this game. We often look too fine, right? We end up taking the sand and the pebbles and sticking those in the jar first instead of realizing what the big rocks are and putting those in first. So I want to start out by taking a really high-level, 10,000-foot view of this whole thing. What is player development? What is it? Well, in the context for this discussion, it's hitting, right? So it's getting guys to hit the ball harder, getting guys to be able to ball strike more consistently than they have, and guys being healthy and be able to go out and do it all the time. Now, all of these things are metrics. These are all data points. Right? Data points that can be collected to tell us if we're actually doing our job. But the most important data point that exists is what happens at 7 o'clock, boys and girls. It has to transfer. If it doesn't transfer, it doesn't matter. Now, when we look at this particular player, we look at this, these numbers, these are statistics over the course of the season. If you look at this player's 2018 season, he had 263 in college.
Dude, I kid you not, dude. What the kid you not, dude. This is almost my exact stat line my final year. Almost my exact stat line. Like, whatever. That's kind of crazy.
3 home runs and 9 doubles. It's not very good. It's not awful, but it's not very good, not for a college player. Well, the next year, right, in his first 16 games, he was batting .245 with 2 doubles and 1 home run. And then he came in and we made a specific swing change. And after that swing change, he had .406 with 14 doubles, 13 jacks, and ended up getting drafted, right, by a professional organization that year. Literally changed his life. Player development is a real thing. And the best at it are doing some really specific things, okay? And there's a secret sauce to it, right? What is that secret sauce? Well, that's what we're here to talk about today, because the real magic, boys and girls, is in the movement. It's in the movement, because every single thing, movement is everything. Every single thing that happens to the ball, when we hit it or when we throw it, is a result of how someone moved. The movement literally creates all of the data, right?
Don't let that go over your head, right? You could have a 95 exit velo, right? What he's saying is, you could have a 95 exit velo swing like freaking Jose Altuve. You could have a 95 exit velo and it looks like the worst swing ever, but you hit the ball hard, right? So the data is the same, but the movement is different, right? Don't let that go over your head.
And our job in player development is to take chicken crap, right? Bad data, bad movement, and turn it into chicken salad. That's our job. Our job is to take the guy that looks like this when he squats and teach him how to look like that and make his body look like that. Now let's think about squatting for a second. Let's say you had an awful squat pattern, for instance, and I think we could all agree this one is terrible, right? Say you got lower back pain. You go see the doctor. And it says, take 3 months off, right, from squatting, get with this PT for rehab, and monitor your workload, and you're going to be fine. And you do your exercises, and everything's great, time to start squatting again. But you go back to doing it the same way you did it before. If you don't change the pattern, you can't fix the problem.
That's a fact.
Okay? If you don't change the pattern, you can't fix the problem. And as a
if you are hanging around friends, right? This is an analogy, right? If you're hanging around friends, you get in the same type of trouble, and then like maybe you're younger, you're in middle school. Your mom's like, yo, you can't hang out with them for a week. You're grounded, right? So for a week, you don't get in trouble, right? And then you hang out with them the following week, and then you get in trouble again. What does that tell you? It is not. It's who you hang around. There's a fundamental problem. It's not just like luck or chance or like, yo, like so and so snitched or like so and so did this. Like, nah, it's the people you hang around.
coach,
Just like the squat, right? What he's saying, don't let this go over your head, okay?
Athletes solve movement problems. That's our job. We have to be problem solvers, right? And you can use all the, this goes on for pitching too, you can use all the weighted balls, bat speed programs, velocity programs that you want. You could get every implement in the world, right, at your disposal. You could know every single cue in the world. You could have every single drill in the world. But if you don't change the pattern, you can't fix the problem. And our job as coaches is to be able to dig into that toolbox of all those different things and figure out how to get that athlete to create a movement adaptation, get that athlete to change how they're moving, okay? As a movement coach, though, before we do that, the first thing we have to understand, like if you want to teach a guy to squat better, right, the first thing you have to understand is what are good positions? Why are they good positions? And how can we what does it look like to efficiently move through those positions? You can't coach it if you don't know what it looks like. You have to start with the movement. As a hitting coach, it is no different. We have to understand what good positions are and why, and how to efficiently move through those positions. Now, good science, good research, not the kind that gets done a lot of the time, but good science, is based on empirical observation. Somebody in a field of expertise is looking into things and he's observing all these things and he's wondering to himself, why is this way? Why is that way?
Again, he's throwing a lot at us right now, but don't let some of these small details go over your head. The biggest question you can ever ask is why. Why does this work? Why does this not work? Why does this happen? Why does this not happen? What am I missing, and why is it missing? Why is the biggest question you can ask, and I promise you that.
This person does this, but this person does that. And then they test it, and they develop hypotheses, right? That's how good science and research starts. So I want to walk you through now some of the observations that we made that kind of led us to where we are. Okay, observation one. And hitting at the landing position, right? Elite hitters, the GOATs, the greatest of all time, they land with their pelvis and trunk in a pretty neutral position, right? Which means their pelvis and trunk, right, are square, right, in front of them. So if I'm hitting this way, they're square to the other batter's box, okay? And they all land with some degree of hinge, right? Some hinge at their waist, okay? So take a look at this slide. We got Trout, Arenado, Stanton, and Cabrera.
And this is something that I didn't really, like, I had people tell me this hinge part, but I never really understood it till like really late in my career, like the last 2 years that I played, right? And I would practice hitting rounds like vertical, right? Same everything, same load, same like hands, really, right? Like with the bat angled the same way, right? I wasn't switching that. Bat was angled the same way. The only thing I would change is the hinge, right? And you just see, like, some coaches call it like head in the fire. You got to keep that head in the fire. It just puts you in a better position. I'm sure he's going to explain why in, greater detail here.
You can clearly see at landing, these are all home runs, by the way. These are all still shots from home runs, right? Look how neutral they are at the landing position, okay? Now let's take a look at three other guys. Babe Ruth, Hank Aaron, Willie Mays. Let's cross over some generations. Let's look at the old school. All three of these guys had monster forward moves. Big old forward moves, but look how they landed. These are also all home runs, okay? Now, let's listen to what Barry Bonds has to say.
この2本の足の真ん中でバランスが取れたとき、ジャストミートが可能になるんです。
And then I strike.
So, right there, you listen to him talk about landing, centered, right, balanced, and then he strikes. He doesn't try to.
All right, we couldn't have got a better video than a Chinese Barry Bonds video. Come on, nah, I'm playing, but for real though.
While he's in the air, he specifically and methodically talks about landing square. This was pulled from an interview he did in Japan, and Barry was a thinker. Barry really worked on his craft. Like, he worked really hard at being great, and that was something that was really, really important to him. Let's listen.
Another note, Barry Bonds, I don't care. He's a Hall of Famer, steroids or not. I don't care. The dude hit whatever amount of 700 home runs that he did, right? And that sure. But, like, how many were wall scrapers, right? Because everyone I see on highlights is an absolute nuke shot, right? His swing was fundamentally sound.
Because it's like,
ちょうどそれはそう
it's like
ドッジボールですよ。
dodgeball. You get
ボ
balance.
ールが飛んできたらバランスを
But you
取って
always
逃げますよね。
balance it so you can make a
あ
decision.
のイメージなん
So
で
I'm
す。
already here.
Bruh.
So, think about what he said. He said it's like dodgeball, right? And he was thinking about that. He
Can't
just
hear
came
what he
up,
said.
tell him, he just came up with that on the
Chinese.
spot. In dodgeball, you can't commit to move any one direction until you can read which way the ball is going, right? So it's kind of like dodgeball, and you have to be balanced and ready to go, and then you read the ball, and then you make a commitment to the move. That's what hitting is. He wanted to land before he committed to actually swinging at the pitch, and that's coming from one of the greatest of all time. Now, varying degrees of hinge at landing. You got everybody from Ken Griffey that had some hinge this way, just a tiny bit, all the way to Ricky Henderson, Vlad Guerrero, Rod Carew that had tremendous hinge, right? So varying degrees, but all had some degree of hinge, okay? Now, observation number 2. This is a big one, okay? This is a big deal. An astronomically large percentage of the GOATs either started closed, right? Meaning angled, right? Stepped closed, or scissored their back foot behind them, okay? Or a combination of any which of those or all three, which puts them all, every single one of them, at an angled position with their body and impact with the ball. This was big. I mean, this is big. okay? You look at everybody from Ernie Banks, you look at
Dude, and the crazy thing about this, right, is that so many coaches, and I'd say when you're young for the right reasons, tells you to, stop diving into the plate, right? If the plate's right here and I'm a lefty, or no, I'm a lefty, right, and I'm crashing this foot into the plate, they're like, yo, like, step towards the pitcher, right? And I get that, but for me, I always took a step, right? If we're looking at homeboy's feet right here, I would always take a slight step in, and I just felt like that angle was the most comfortable. Let's see what he has to say.
Miguel Cabrera, Hank Aaron, Mike Trout, Robin Yount, Paul Molitor, Stanton, Ripken, Chris Bryant, like up and down the line. You look at Ruth, look at his back foot. He starts close, step close, and kicks back. Right? Hank Aaron starts close, step close, and kick back. Mays starts even, steps closed, and kicks back. Okay? Manny Ramirez, Frank Thomas, Mark McGwire, right? Look observe what's actually happening right here. It's amazing that in my entire life of studying this game passionately, I never saw this before, and then once I saw it for the first time, I couldn't unsee it ever again. I couldn't unsee it ever again. It was almost confusing when I first saw it. Like, how did I not ever see that before? All of our brains think autobiographically through our own lens. We almost train ourselves to see things in the way that we understand them. So it's important to really open up the mind.
That's true too, right? They say like you never see a car till your friend buys it, right? And then your friend buys like, whatever car, like a gray Subaru, and then all of a sudden you're seeing all these gray Subarus. Like, your perspective is shaped by like what you're aware of and the knowledge that you have, right? That's important.
Truly observe what's actually happening and wonder why this is happening. Look at Altuve. Look at McCutcheon. Look at Tatis Jr., right? Like, if all of these guys are doing this throughout history, there's got to be some kind of reason why. And it must be something powerful. Look at Trout. Look at JD. Look at Miggy, right? Like, unbelievable. Griffey, Bonds, Edgar Martinez. Like, and then, interestingly enough, when you look at hitters' lower halves, there's another interesting thing that happens, right? You'll see their back foot, right? After it gets peeled up, you'll see it anchor back and flatten right into impact with the ball. So there are some guys that don't even like step close. There's even some hitters that are open. Not as many, much smaller faction, but they're landing open. But that heel, boy, those guys, it anchors down big time. Okay? Take a look at George Springer, right? See that back foot right into impact. It hardly gets turned, and then it kicks back and it works back down. So you see a combination there. Now with Votto, you'll see it really just peel up, work right back down. Okay? And when you look across the board, man, you got Sammy Sosa, Ricky Henderson, Andres Colorado, Mike Schmidt, like all of these guys. It's not some of them. When I said astronomically higher percentage, I meant astronomically high percentage. Okay? Observation number 3, how quickly their pelvis stops. I don't know who remembers this, but this is an epic moment in baseball history. This is Game 7 of the World Series. This is Joe Carter. This is a walk-off home run. Every kid's dream, right, that they practice in their backyard. Look how quickly his pelvis stops. Look at the...
I think what's important on this point, right, is I was talking with a kid I was doing a lesson with yesterday. And I was like, like a F-250, right? Strong truck, big engine, right? You can't pit Toyota Camry brakes on a strong engine. So people always talk about creating power with your legs, creating power, or even like creating power with like your torso a little bit sometimes. But the key though is you got to be able to stop that. And personally, I was never one to lock my leg, and people often told me like, yo, lock your leg, but I was able to have slight bend and still break, right? So it's not so much about getting this straight leg, but it's about the ability to like put a brake on. And like, you got to be able to, you put this brake on to whip this power around, right? You create this power and you whip it around, you brake, And if you didn't break, you would just roll over to the third baseman. You would just whip in and out of the zone and go towards this third baseline over here. But you put this brake on and you whip around and you create the power and the momentum going towards the field, right? If you're on time.
Of his pelvis right here. See how quickly that stops? Like that's interesting, right? I mean, I thought that was an interesting observation. Let's take a look at Hank Aaron. Let's take a look at his hips. Look how quickly they stop. And in fact, let's not just look at Hank Aaron, let's hear from him. Let's hear what he has to say about it.
If you have no roll and you can hit the ball to right field with a lot of power.
Did you hear what he just said? If you have no roll in your hips, you can hit the ball to right field with a lot of power. Guys, this is like 50 years ago. And Hank Aaron specifically just told you that he did not want his pelvis to roll forward, right?
That's literally what I was just saying. Like, what he's saying is a lot of guys swing with a lot of power. They have a lot of bat speed. They create a lot of power with their legs, but they fly open, right? They hit BP. They hit a lot of fly balls. Over in this foul territory, they hit a lot of ground balls at third base. They hit if they hit hard doubles, it's like down the line, right? The brake, you put the brake on, so when this power is getting created, because you're corking, right? It's like a swivel. You swivel this power to the middle of the field instead of swiveling, not braking, and just swiveling it, and you're only using one half of the field.
He didn't want it to roll. He wants it to stay behind. This was an interview. They asked him, how do you hit the ball to the opposite field with so much power, right? This was his response. That's how he does it. He specifically understands what's happening with his body, and he feels like that helps him hit the ball to the opposite.
And again, so like he's talking about hitting the ball to right field, right, over here. So now, right, you swivel, right, you brake. And you want to shoot yourself towards the middle of the field, right? But say it's an outside pitch over here. You swivel, you brake, and now you, instead of keep moving towards the middle of the field, you swivel and shoot this energy out, right? I'm going to call it energy. You can call it corking, whatever. You're corking, you're creating this energy, this whip, this movement. Ideally down the middle, you swivel it and move it towards the middle of the field. What's your control here? What I would say control. You got your brake and you got your control, which is your back hip. You control that energy towards the middle of the field, and you outside pitch, swivel, boom, control and shoot that energy to right field.
More power. Interesting. Something we need to research. Willie Mays, Pete Rose, Dave Winfield. Look at the angle of the pelvis. His hips haven't even like turned. Look at Rose and BP. Look how quickly that pelvis stops. Look at Mays. Look how quickly it stops. Look at that angle from the pelvis. Right? Let's look at Manning. Let's look at Frank Thomas. Let's look at McGuire. Same thing. You look at the same videos and see the same thing. Manny Ramirez. You got Altuve. Let's look at Manny.
Watch this Manny swing one more time. I got to figure out how to do the 10-second thing.
Look how quickly that pelvis stops. Look at Mays. Look how quickly it stops. Look at that angle from the pelvis. Right?
Look at this. Look at this. Look at this. He's going to break, and he's pulling the pitch, right? So he's break, and watch how this back hip, like, it's not going out because he's not going oppo. It's not going middle, right? He's turning on it. He's still braking, but he's swiveling this energy pull side.
Manning.
Boom.
Let's look at Frank Thomas. Let's look at McGuire. Same thing.
Boom.
You look at the same videos and see the same thing. Manny Ramirez. You got Altuve. You got Betts. You got
Tatis right here. This is perfect. Like, even though it's like a little left center, it's still middle. Watch this.
Same thing. You look at the same videos and see the same thing. Manny Ramirez.
Watch this, dude. He explodes on this ball middle. Breaks, shoots this energy. He swivels this energy straight to the middle, man. Watch this.
You got Altuve.
Boom.
You got Betts. You got Tatis. Right? You got Trout. You got JD. You got Miggy. All the same. Observation number 4. Okay? How quickly their trunk stops. I want you to take a look at Brian. Think about how fast. These are both also home runs, by the way. Think about how fast this motion takes place. And think about how still all of that body is. The only thing moving, there becomes a point in time where the barrel and the arms are the only thing moving. Everything else has come to a direct and complete halt. Okay? This ball that Barry Bonds hit, like this is one you can find on YouTube. This guy hit this into the roof. I think it was at the Tokyo Dome and some live BP. Like there was almost no rotation there. Look how quickly everything stopped. Take a look at Altuve. Take a look right here. Look at
That's what it's like. Whip, dude. It's whip, right? So he's talking about for a split second here, everything stops in this bat.
just completely. Look at the whole body, just stable, right? Nothing happened.
Watch.
Now,
Come on, man.
completely. Look at the whole to a direct and complete halt. Okay. This ball that Barry Bonds hit.
Watch this. So like he stops, he corked, right? He loaded, whipped, swiveled around, now the bat kind of lags, right, a little bit, and then at the last point of like right before contact, at contact, everything kind of stops and the bat whips through the zone, right? That's what he's talking about.
Like this is one you can find on YouTube. This guy hit this into the table, right? Nothing happened. Now, while we've seen these things and a lot of the greatest of all time, I think it's important when you're doing research to explore as many other avenues as you possibly can. So let's look at some similar activities that require rotation, force production, and striking an object. Start with golf, right? This is one of the long drive champions of the world right here on the left. We're seeing a lot of similarity, especially to how him and J.D. Martinez move. But we really don't see that pelvis rotating a whole lot here. We see that back foot start to slide a little behind. It's not really rotating a tremendous amount. Take a look at Tiger Woods, right? He's the GOAT, right? Take a look at his back foot. Oh, look, it just stops and holds and holds and holds all the way through the rest of that swing, right? Now let's take a look at Roy McIlroy, right? Roy McIlroy is like 5'8". This dude hits the ball like 400 yards, right? Like, what is he doing? Well, looks like the same thing. That's all the way through extension in the swing, and his back foot holds on. Here's Tony Finau, right? Finau is a notably short backswing, right? But hits the ball pretty good. His back heel doesn't even come off the ground 1 inch all the way through extension to that point. Not 1 inch, okay? Now, here's Mike Trout. Mike Trout golfing. I don't know if anybody saw that video going around last year of him hitting balls out of the what's it called, the golfing facility, just hitting absolute bombs.
I ain't gonna lie, dude. I cannot hit a golf ball, and golf like really aggravates me. I'll learn it one day, but like right now, this is actually like impressive if you haven't seen this.
Oh look, he does the same thing here. He does the same thing here. Now let's move the needle. How about chopping wood, right? Chopping wood. We're swinging an axe. We're striking an object. We're trying to transmit force into the object. Look at those feet. They hardly rotate. Everything stops at impact, right? Different activity, a lot of similar things, interesting to look at. Now let's take a look at the weight room. Put somebody on a cable machine, or this happens to be a Versapulley, which is a flywheel. They're amazing, interesting, right? Now how about little kids? I think one of the best things we can all do is look at little kids. Look at true self-organization, right?
We're dragging it.
About 10 pounds of water, same exercise. She's
Dragging it.
years ago. And if you notice, first time ever swinging against the moving ball, he kicks back and oh, look at that. Look at the counter rotation of the pelvis right after he hits it. Really interesting, right? Interesting stuff. Now let's take a look at this kid. This one's great, right? Because look at the dad.
This kid smokes it, bro. This is such a cool video. Look at that swing though, like for a kid his age, I don't even know what age he is, but like if you work with youth baseball players, this is like so far ahead of his age.
this ball like, holy cow, son, you're going to the big leagues. How'd you just do that? Interesting movement right here, right? Little kid, probably had no lessons, right? He's probably like 5 years old. Well, strides, and what does he do right through impact? Well, he kicks back, and he stops.
And I think what's key here is, like, especially for, like, kids these age, like, what's so important is making them move in, like, athletic ways at a young age, right? And, like, nowadays, like, that's becoming less and less of a thing because people are inside, people are on their phones, video games, yada, yada, yada. But, like, if you can just get them to do athletic movements, even if the movement they do is not, like, you know, as much as kids would move in, like, the 1980s, whatever. But when they do move, make sure they athletically move properly. And that sets themselves up for such, like, good, you know, posture, mobility, flexibility going into, like, their teenage years.
His pelvis stops. And, gosh, I think for his size and age, like, that's pretty good.
He's really dragging this. Let's see what he has to say, though.
Machine pitch. And this team was absolutely raking. Like, they were absolutely crushing us. And I went to talk to the coaches even after the game, and they were just dads. None of them have ever even coached their kids before. And we still see all these amazing same movements showing up. Now, the interesting thing you might be wondering now is like, well, how come more of my players at the college level or the high school level or whatever don't look like that, even the professional level? How come more guys don't do that when they hit? And here's a really interesting thing. The most biomechanically similar, in a lab, the data, the most biomechanically similar movements to a big leaguer, to the elites, to the best of all time, are little kids. Little kids, right, that move naturally, okay? So, with all of this.
That is key, like, moving naturally, like, and people will be like, what is natural? Like, we just watch so many videos of, like, pure swings, right? Like, you're just moving naturally, and then, like, at this age, right, or I'd even say more like this kid's age, for some reason, at this age, right, like, they got good dads, they got good coaches, like, energetic people who don't really change their swing too much. They just let them move how they want to move, right? And then for some reason, like, between 10 and, like, 14, there's, like, a coach they get for some reason, some, like, bozo coach taints this kid's swing or, like, fundamentals because he's got some ego and he's some, like, ex-pro player that played, like, 1 year in the pros, 1 year in the minors, and he's got, like, no fundamental understanding and how to translate, and, like, these kids will move so smooth. And I'd say, like, you know, a lot of these kids, like, I'd say a majority of them end up, like, being good players, right? But there's, like, 25%, I don't know the exact stats, I'm just making a number in my head, that, like, their ability gets tainted, right, at, like, 10 to 14, because now they're starting to think, like, yo, what a coach tells me is really important, and, like, I got to implement everything he says, and boom, coach tells him to do something weird, then he loses it, right? He loses it going into JV, and then he quits baseball after high school. Like, these that have swings like this
strides and
should just not have a superb amount, like, not superb, like a lot of coaching, right? They will be able to figure it out. If they get a good foundation when they're really young, they will be able to figure it out the rest of their life for the most part, as long as they understand as they get older why they're doing what they're doing, the why question. But, for example, not to drag it, but say this kid, right, super athletic, he's got a good dad, right? He gets this bozo coach on this good travel team when he's like 14, right? Now, all of a sudden, you're playing a little higher stakes, right? You're playing on a little bigger tournaments. Now, like, you're starting to get some, like, top talent you play against. Maybe there's, like, one scout, like, at your not facility, but, like, tournament grounds, and now you're starting to get a little nervous when you play and you have one bad game and your coach tells you something, and for the first time ever at, like, 13, 14 years old, you're like, I gotta listen to him, even though, like, you got such a good fundamental swing and you know what you're doing. Like, I don't know. That's just my opinion. At like the 13 to 14-year-old age, like there's a lot that can go really well or like really bad for you. And that's just my opinion. And kind of from personal experience, like what happened to me.
Really interesting. Maybe seen some things you never seen before, heard some things you never heard before. But what does it even mean? What does it even mean? And how can this information help you do a better job in player development? We're going to get to that in the next presentation.
All right, so this is the first one. I appreciate everyone watching. If you watch this far, now the thing is, we're on Instagram. Okay, this is our Instagram. Undiscovered prospects, a lot of mental game stuff, right? We got a lot of like breakdowns, how to implement stuff, and we're also on TikTok. Obviously, if you're watching this, we're on YouTube, right? So a lot of mental game stuff, a lot of easily implementable stuff. So I appreciate if you guys like this video. I mean, you don't gotta share it. You can share it or not share it. It's cool. Next time we'll be online. We'll be watching this one right here. Boom. Part 2. I think there's a part 3. Yeah, part 3. You know, comment what you think, man. I dropped a lot of opinions in here. You know, let me know what you guys think about this. So I'll catch you guys next time.